because it takes people to build a community. It's not AI that's going to build it for us. It needs interaction, and it needs to be maintained, and it needs, people need to be contacted in a very authentic and genuine way, not just, hey, we're having an event.
Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of the creative effectiveness platform Automated Creative, and this is a podcast about the future of data-driven marketing. We've done over 300 episodes of this thing for years and years and years, and it's my absolute pleasure and privilege to interview our industry's leaders about their vision for the future of data-driven marketing, and this week's no different. I am on a call, I'm happy to say my friend as well as my client and networking lunch buddy, Julie Pender. So I've known Julie for a while now, and it's an absolute treat to have her on the show. But currently she is at Pernod Ricard as Havana Club UK Creative and Content Manager. So Julie, for anyone who doesn't have the pleasure of knowing you, can you give the audience a bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. So I'm Canadian. You might tell that by my accent. I've lived in the UK for about, I'm going to say 17 years now. I came for 1 year to have a bit of fun because I was working for William Grant & Sons in the spirits industry. And they had a chance to move me here, and I've never looked back. And I've been working in beverage alcohol marketing and global and local roles here in the UK the entire time I've been here. Before that, the one interesting fact, Tom, that you maybe don't know is I actually worked for a Canadian winery. So my first job in the industry was actually at a winery. And I love right now that everyone's saying Gen Z is not drinking wine, because I was something like 25 years old, came out of university, and was absolutely enthralled with wines and wineries. And that got me into the industry. And here I've remained my entire career. I don't even want to count the years because it's over 25 years now. I've been doing basically beer, spirits, and wine marketing.
So my theory about alcohol marketing, of which Automated Creative done a lot with you and others, is that it's all about pleasure. Right? There's not many marketing categories that are all about delivering happiness and pleasure, albeit for the moment. Yes, there are others, but a lot of the times like solving a problem or helping you get from A to B or whatever it is. But alcohol marketing, it's all about giving someone that moment of joy, which I think makes it a really lovely category to work in.
Yeah, I think it's. I've always thought of it more of entertainment. I don't know. For me, it's about. You're doing it while you're, in the ideal circumstances, because I'm not going to be naive. But when I think about alcohol, it's not meant to be the focus of your evening out. It's meant to be when you're, out with your friends and you're in a great restaurant and you're having a fabulous supper and you had some lovely wines to go with it. And it might be part of the conversation. And so for me, it was always part of that kind of entertaining aspect of being with your friends and enjoying things together. But you're right, actually, it could be joy, pleasure. Although my mind goes into another category. So thank you for that inspiration, because maybe I can do a parallel CV into what else my skill set can have a transferability into.
So are you a marketing book person? Do you sort of squirrel away and get through different marketing books, or do you sort of learn on the job? What's your angle?
So I am more of a kind of podcast or condensed version book kind of person. I don't tend to read a lot of books, and that's mostly because my book reading years with children kind of became a little bit harder to find the time to do it. So I look for efficiencies. So I love kind of YouTube short content more likely than books. But I do have, every so often some book will rise above. And I just got this new one recommended to me by this guy by the name of Tom Ollerton. He's just some kind of data-driven one. So that's next on my reading list, actually.
Have you bought it yet? Have you got it?
Not yet. It's bookmarked, though. Don't worry. It's coming. It's coming.
So that's interesting that you haven't bought my book yet, but that's fine. I'll forgive you. And you go to podcasts and YouTube and so on. And I'd like to know more a bit later about the kind of short form version of the books and stuff. I've tried that, and not for a long time. But is there one particular book that you find yourself relying on?
Okay, so there's one particular book that I love, and I go back and watch the short form content on, and I actually watched the TED Talk and then went back and bought the book because I absolutely loved it. It's actually the 15th year anniversary of the Simon Sinek Start With Why. I absolutely love that question. I think seeking out to understand things is absolutely critical in every situation. And in my mind, it's become so much more relevant the more self-aware I've become and the more aware I've become around the world as I kind of opened up my worldview, having left Canada in a small town and then came and lived in a very different global market. I think starting with why is always a great place. And I just find Simon Sinek really inspirational. And then, yeah, it's one of my favorite books, and I recommend it. It's the book I recommend most to people when they say, what book should I read?
So I think isn't it like the most viewed TED Talk ever or something?
I think it might be. Yeah.
So along those lines. But assuming someone who's watching this, listening to this, hasn't heard it, how could you relay what the book or the TED Talk is saying?
So the key part for me that resonates with me is that when I read that book, I was working at William Grant & Sons. I had moved from Glenfiddich local market, and I'd come into a global marketing role. And I still had this mentality, perhaps it comes from this institutional approach to your education, that people were leading me, that I was the recipient of the leadership happening around me. And maybe it's because of, that relationship of control when you're in the classroom. But what really Simon Sinek's book for me is reframe the fact that I was a leader. Even though I wasn't in a paid position of authority, I was still a leader. I could be a leader in culture in terms of what I brought into the business. I could actually directly lead on the projects that I was responsible for. And I was working with people, and I could be a leader in the room in terms of what we were trying to deliver. And that for me was a real transformational reframing, because up until then, I would sit sometimes at a table and have a point of view and not share it. Maybe it was, now everybody calls it imposter syndrome, but I would pause. I'd be like, oh, maybe somebody else can say that because they're the leader in the room. They're paid more than I am. They're more senior than I am. And so the real big thing for me was the reframing of who and what a leader is.
And what was your why in that scenario? Because that's what he talks about in the center of it. I didn't know why you were doing something and everything.
Yeah, and I think that for me is also around a lot of debate right now is happening around purpose-driven and understanding why you're doing something. So for me, I actually started to understand my why and what I like, as I really like people. A lot of what I do and what the motivation I get, the energy I get, what really comes to when I need, when I get engaged in projects and get engaged in things, for me, the why is around the people. It's around the humans, and finding that kind of purpose in terms of why I'm there.
So one of the criticisms of the Sinek's approach is that it's relevant for you personally in a let's say we're talking about a professional environment here, and that was instantly applicable. But then if you try and put a why for a brand,
yeah.
You can say, oh, we exist because this is our purpose or our mission or whatever, when in reality, consumers are often just buying because it's cheap or the other thing isn't available. So
isn't that the why? Isn't that the why? They're buying it because, in alcohol industry, we get caught up in, I think, trying to say, there's lots of reasons why I want to feel special when I drink this single malt, or, this gin is going to be the highest quality gin that's going to impress my friends when I drink it. But I don't really think people think that way. I think you're right. The why is often can be quite fundamental. It's like, I remembered what it was when it was on shelf, and it was the price point. And so that's why our very first conversation today was about, I always thought we were part of more about entertainment, because the why people were drinking, and again, this is not every occasion, but the why was to be, part of a pleasant moment and entertained, and to be with your friends and socializing. It's not, or to be, to enjoy the pleasure of it. But it was never, they don't expect their alcohol to be fixing the world. I'm not drinking that gin because this gin is going to be what fixes global warming. I still think there's a table stake that you have to be not killing the planet when you go to build what you're building. But I think the purposes became so lofty. It's like everything became very, too ambitious for what the category was. So I think the why can be a simple why.
So moving from purpose and lofty claims and gins that solve the climate crisis and so on, what advice do you have for data-driven marketers to become better? What is that kind of one bit of advice that you find yourself sharing with your teams on how to improve their performance as data-driven folks?
So we get a lot of data. So at Pernod Ricard, we have a huge amount of insights. We have insights teams. We have a data insight warehouse. So you can get a lot of information. And for me, it's finding the key bits of insight that you can from a load of observations that are getting thrown at you. And I think that that's the key thing, that actually a lot of people, especially when newer people come into the category, they get quite excited about the observations they're making, as a new person into the category, and around alcohol, and around kind of the consumer usage and occasion motivation and the brand stories and the authenticity and all of these wonderful things that attracted me into the industry. But again, there are lots of observations. And I think it's about understanding the difference between observation, insight, and then an insight that your business can actually, or your brand can actually jump onto and use to drive profitable growth. Because I think the other thing that happens is a lot of observations from data get used to drive wrong behaviors. And we sometimes forget what we're ultimately here to do. And it's, in my case, it's to sell rum, right? If I do some amazing things that show phenomenal growth and I've delivered billions of impressions, but I did not sell one bottle of Havana Club, I didn't do my job.
So that is one of the key themes that comes from the book. And one particular interview I had with Perla Bloom, I think she said, sorry, Perla, I can't remember where you were. She was at EA when I interviewed her. That's the most important thing. Expedia, thank you. There we go. And she was talking about she was acting as a kind of strategist within the business, and she was saying that if you have a data point that's interesting, it's stopping you doing your job. It's an insight is something that inspires a creative idea, and we've very much taken on that thought at Automated Creative. Actually, so when we're reporting back to our clients, it's like having something where you'll scratch your chins and go, "Yeah, that's interesting." That's just wasting everyone's time. Whereas it's like this: here's this insight, right? Okay, we should now go and do that. It's obvious we should go and do this next thing because it inspired a creative action. Yeah. Whereas if it's just like, that is interesting, that's wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, but you're right. There's so much data that is interesting. And especially as an individual, when you first come into a category or a brand or into a market, because when we're working globally, I might go into a new marketplace and go, that's really interesting that basically, Spanish consumers love sweeter style rums, but hate being called spiced rums because they think it's too sweet. But actually what they're drinking is sweeter style rums. But I'm like, well, how does that help me? What am I going to do with that information? What do I throw out every recipe we've made? How do I turn that into something like, what does it turn into an innovation story? Which, how do you leverage that into something that your brand can use for profitable growth?
It's like, I think a really good example of quite often just interesting information is like Fitbits and fitness trackers. You get it and you're like, look at that. I did more steps on Wednesday. I did more steps on Wednesday than on Thursday. My heart ran up. But what are you going to do differently? Are you exercising more? Are you so yes, I totally agree with that point. So we're going to now talk about your shiny new object, which is the power of community. So I'm not convinced this is a shiny new object, but I'm sure that you will convince me that it can be.
Okay, so one of the interesting data points that I've seen in some of our brand health trackers is this human connection is missing. We're getting a lot of people addicted to devices. There's a lot of inspirational ideas where like put your phone and lock it up when you go into a bar, so your friends talk to each other and you stay in the moment. And at Havana Club, we've actually built a really large community around the brand. And we've been doing lots of things individually with people. But actually the power of the shiny new thing about community is about how do you unlock the collective energy of your community? And how do you do that in a way now that brings people back into physical spaces and back together? Because, and at fairly good scale. Because I think what everyone loved about digital is that I could reach millions of people with such small budgets. And then now we're like, actually, it's not quite true. If you're going to have really great content online, it costs quite a bit of money. And the more interesting it is, the smaller the audience gets because it's more niche, it's more interesting to them. But the community, the shiny new thing for me about the community is when I see what we're looking at in terms of post-COVID world, where there's a generation that didn't experience going out and, for example, going to nightclubs and seeing, how their university experience was all online on a computer. They didn't have those moments of coming back together again. We're seeing, different things happen with religion and churches were traditionally a high-touch community part. And for me, when I look at the shiny new thing, what I see and what we've really been able to build on Havana Club is we've curated a community of people who have the same ethos that we do, and that we're working together to help each other and using the community to collectively use our energy to do something together. And that for me is about community.
I really like that point around, digital, we can hit everyone everywhere, but it's expensive. And if anyone's going to find it relevant, you need to niche down, and that reduces the reach, which is such a good point. Just can you give me some specifics on how you've actually done that? How you found this community of people who have the same beliefs as you do? Like, how has that evidenced itself, and how has that worked?
So it's partners. It's how we pick partners to work with, and how you pick partners to have long-term relationships. So a lot of the time, from a brand marketing point of view, there's a lot of global talent that gets out there, and a lot of celebrity. And actually, one of our strongest, biggest impacts for Havana Club came in the last kind of 12 months has been from what we call our grassroots community. So we basically build relationships with people. We build relationships with, smaller kind of boutique kind of service providers for people that we might want to do events with, or that we might want to do kind of influencer outreach with. And we start to try and build a relationship. And even on that influencer part, I hate that word now because I think it's so broad, anybody who's influencing someone, but it's like, how do we actually find partners and collaborate with them and then pull them into our community? And then they know. So, a couple of people now I think I'm on the regular speed dial. Julie, I need some rum for my event. And it's not like, oh, send me your pitch deck, how much, I don't go through this whole massive analysis. I'm like, actually, you're part of my community. Of course, I'm going to, be there for you when you're going to go launch something at your side. Tom, when you have your book launch party, I want to be the rum that's available in a fantastic rum teeny, or maybe an El Presidente. I feel like you might be that kind of guy. But that's, that for me is about building that community. And it's done through personal interaction and successfully building things together.
So, Julia, I think the best cocktail recipe you gave me was this rum and coke, but with sea salt in it.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Spiced rum. Can I do a product promo?
Yeah.
Spiced rum. Yeah, let me do it. Because it really works with Havana Club spiced rum. It's Havana Club spiced rum with your cola of choice, and then Malden flaked salt. And all of your friends are going to look at you and think you're crazy. You're going to say, taste the difference now, and all of the spices come out. And it's so easy.
Yeah, and it feels quite naughty. Feels quite naughty, doesn't it? Like having a bit of salt in there. It feels like sort of a bit extra, but in a good way. Okay, so you've built this community that's beneficial in two directions. You help them, they help you. You share those. Insights, backgrounds. I would like to hear you talk about the automated creative part of that, but we can all edit out if they don't feel that's relevant. But
no, but it is relevant for that actually, because when I go and I look at a project now, it's how I approach what I'm going to do, and I think I'm going to try and find a way to articulate it, because Tom, no, I've never articulated this. This is just kind of what's happened. When I first came into the brand a year ago, there was lots of little things happening on the brand with lots of different people. And there were people who were big fans of the brand who wanted to work with us. We were working with big talent, little talent, medium-sized talent. And there was lots of people doing lots of little things. And what happened is I pulled it together into a community, and I started to pick a couple of key points where we could all work together and figure out, hey, what are you trying to do? What are your objectives, and what are my objectives? And in terms of automated creative, you guys came fairly early in on that journey, because I did do a Cuban mode launch campaign where I needed to get insights in terms of what messaging was resonating into our community, into the people who were actively engaging with us in social media, on our own pages, but as well as what was working when we were trying to unlock new audiences and bring people back into the brand. And for me, that you are part of my community. When I need insights that goes beyond that kind of level of observation, it is your team that I call. And it's that level of insight that gives me the power to talk about messaging back into the community, because I'm looking for things I know have already resonated. So I do see the data points that can show that people are engaging in the conversations. And so I know this is super, when I think about a very specific example, we had a gold limited edition bottle that we were launching last year, and we had a launch party. And what I could have done is I just could have farmed it all out to, it was a ton of money. You throw it at an event agency and you say, go ahead and go and do your thing. But that's not actually, I did it again. We did Big Lime Energy. I had your team, I invited them up for drinks there. twice in the last 2 events, the most successful parts of our actual events in terms of reaching highly engaged people and leading to kind of desired behavior change has been through, I've picked the DJs who are DJs now we've worked with consistently, who work and co-promote events with us because they're not hired in by an events company for the day before. We work with media partners that we might be asking for that would be traditionally called influencers or content creators that we've worked with in the past. So we're trying to work with them again to say, actually, we got another event. Can you come back? And it's about building those long-term relationships so that they come into the community. And like I said, I actually owe somebody a text message right now over the weekend that said, can I have some rum this week? Because I need some rum for my event. And I'm like, absolutely. I'm going to go, you're part of my community. I'm going to give some back.
Julie, no one's ever come on this podcast before and talked so passionately and openly about giving away free booze for events. I think you can, your community.
No, drink responsibly.
Of course, drink responsibly. But I think people are going to reach out and say, I want to be part of this, this wonderful community that you've built. So what are the pushbacks that you've had internally when you've put forward this strategy of building a community? Because to your point, an event can feel quite small. And then I would have thought a CMO might be, well, now we need reach, awareness, saliency, top of mindness at the point of sale. What arguments do you find yourself winning with when it comes to getting people on board with investing in communities in a world where it's all about reach?
We have a great case study. So I would say we did a partnership last year with a Canadian jeweler. There's a real Canadian theme around what happened to Havana Club, and Simon Sinek's Canadian as well. But we had a Canadian jeweler, a guy by the name of Jonathan Rackshaw. He's a goldsmith. And so we had him design our label. We had him come to London for an event. I mean, he was in himself, I don't know, had like 10, 15,000 followers. He's not a celebrity. He does grills for a lot of the hip hop crowd. And he did an absolutely stunning bottle. And he came over and gave us his time to be at a launch event. And we got our community out to attend it. We got our DJs that we pulled on, that we've worked with in the past. We tried to start with our invite list with people who were regular supporters of the brand. And we had about 120 people at the event. But it was the biggest share of conversation and the biggest kind of brand health tracker move we saw with I would say a fairly minimal investment compared to how would it done in the past. So you take that case study to stakeholders and say, here's what we can do, because it takes people to build a community. It's not AI that's going to build it for us. It needs interaction, and it needs to be maintained, and it needs, people need to be contacted in a very authentic and genuine way, not just, hey, we're having an event. That's why the community is actually a really community. It's not just, my Rolodex of who I can call.
Yeah, I've been chatting to Alex Hobhouse, my business partner, and he's saying that there's all too many conversations where people go, oh, you can just use this AI now to throw up a website for a rum brand, and you can do it all vibe coding and all the rest of it. But everyone's talking about these things as if it's only them that can do it.
Yeah, everybody can.
It's like I don't know, it's like someone getting off the Eurostar going, look, I got from London to Paris in an hour and a half or whatever it was. But but so did like 400 other people. It's not a business. Well, it's not a competitive advantage. It's just a disadvantage not to do it. And I think what's really going to matter in the next few years, I always say this about automated creative, is like we need to do what everyone else isn't prepared to do. And that's the thing that will make you cut through and stand out. And I think what you're talking about here, Julia, if I understand it correctly, is going to that extra length. I mean, getting this weird designer guy over from Canada to do an event, but then that's the thing that works. That's the thing that builds the brand. That's rare, right? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so. And Tom, I think you do that actually quite naturally. And maybe I'm not articulating it well, but you've created this amazing WhatsApp group from people who have participated in your AMA. And, when I see the power of the crowd and how genuinely helpful people are, that are sometimes answering questions and queries and responses and giving support to other people where they don't have to, right? But you've got their experience through automated creative in common. And then they genuinely are interested in the topic. And I think, like, when I look at that stuff, I'm quite curious about what's happening in the world. So I get a little bit of knowledge out of it, but genuinely, opening doors for each other and supporting each other because they're supporting people. If you put an AI robot into that group to automate the answers, take away the magic.
Exactly. My favorite thing in that group last week was the week before that. Was it Daria? He said, "Look, I've written this post.
Yes.
I've written this post, but I didn't use any AI in it. Like
Yes.
AI, like the absence of AI is being a proof of like quality or integrity or value, which is that's different, isn't it? That's a real change for me. I thought it was,
you put in spelling errors so it looks like you actually did it, and don't put an M dash. Everybody hates the M dash. Looks like AI.
Yeah, true. Julie, so unfortunately we have to call it a day there. Although I'd love to carry on chatting. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, where is the best place to do that? And what makes a message that you'll actually reply to?
So the best place to get in touch with me is actually LinkedIn, and sending a message makes me reply. When people just send me blank notes on LinkedIn, I tend to kind of I get so many of them. But if they send
what's a blank note?
Oh, don't you just get requests to connect with people?
Just
so,
that, right? You need the little...
Add a note. Add a note. There's a little button on the side that says add a note and say, here's how I'm relevant. Here's what's interesting. Here's where I saw you. And I'm not just like a cold lead, because I do think I get a lot of people asking, just, open the door. I want access to your company, your corporate.
So
but I am looking for partners and communities. So that's also a great note to put in there to say, we think we can, like you said, spark something together. And it's the idea of, when people come together, you create better things. So I'm always looking to make my community bigger.
Julie, thank you so much for your time.